When I'm talking to owners about putting together world-class projects, the question really is, what does that mean and how do we do that? And to me, a lot of it has to do with the way that we synthesize information, the way that we take different parts and different pieces of material that we have, some of which are things like the goals that you have for your project, your intent for the project. Other things are, what the building might be, what the program you're trying to put into a space might be, or whatever the different mix is that we put together. How do we synthesize all that information? And so much of that comes out of our own experiences and our own things that we've done in the past, the way that we are bringing our own experiences and education and knowledge into the conversation so that when we're working together as a small team, we can move forward faster, saving time, getting to a better result, really using the most sort of skilled and most interesting ideas, boiling the rest of it away, getting to ideas that are better than any of us would have on our own. And in order to do that, you have to have the right mix of people, and it has to have a bunch of people who are together, who have the right experiences that they're bringing to the table. It's the same as when you look at your favorite writer or director or artist or whoever. They have an authentic voice, and that's what is the thing that we are attracted to. Like your favorite director or your favorite artist, you probably don't even care what it is that they do. You just want to go see it. Like I love seeing movies from my favorite directors that I don't want to know anything about it. I just know that they did it and I want to go see it. And so that's the sort of authenticity that their experience and their own way of looking at the world, that's what they're bringing to a project. And that's how I look at why it's so important for our own experiences, our own story to be part of the conversation, so that when it comes to putting everything together, that's really what we're bringing to the table so that we can work fast and we can move forward. And so, other examples might be, when you are having surgery or something like that, certainly you want someone with the right experience, someone who's done the type of procedure that you're going to have. You don't want someone who has maybe done it once, maybe they've done it 2 times, but certainly it's not like a core aspect of their practice. Or you want people who you even know who is going to be doing the work for you. If you're hiring an office, who's actually doing the work? Is it I've been in these offices, is it some very junior person? Do you even know who it is? Are they the same talent as the person who maybe is selling you to hire that office for the job? And so again, to me, that's why I like the small team. I like working with owners directly, because it really, really boils things down to the core aspect of what's most important: moving fast, getting rid of a lot of the layers that slow us down. And so, the question right now that we're going to look at is, what does that mean from my perspective, based on my own experience and my own work? And so, jumping into that, if we look at this sort of circle that we've got here, I started my travel really as a kid, as a competitive climber. So if we look at this as like a pedal, here I am in the middle, I'm an independent advisor. That pretty quickly, when I started climbing, this was in the 90s, I was like a 15-year-old kid. I got really into it, and it really started pushing me into learning a lot of lessons that, to be completely honest, I still find really relevant today. And I'm surprised in some ways how often I look at my past in climbing, the lessons I learned about figuring out how to climb things, mentally training, preparing my body physically, the way that those things go together. So much of those lessons, so many of those things that I learned are still things that I think about and practice today as someone who's in my 40s running a business with a family. And so that aspect of me being a very dedicated climber, eventually a competitive climber, working my way through nationals, really taking it seriously, certainly led and helped with my time as a climbing wall designer, which was in the early 2000s. So I think it was about 2001 through '04. And that was like 50 gyms or more. It was a really, really great experience. And there was a lot of overlap, certainly between my actual ability as a climber and someone who was designing climbing walls, and someone who, when I started doing that, I was in my undergrad studying architecture. And so it was an interesting thing to be able to combine climbing wall design and my architecture. And as I moved forward, eventually I ended up going back to graduate school. And, so that was a time at fancy graduate school. My time in Boulder. And my work that I had done, it was a lot of design build work. We were designing the walls, we were building them. And so, that really was a nice transition into going back to school and getting my Master of Architecture degree, which, also goes hand in hand with the work that I've been doing the last 10 to 12 years as a professor, first at Northeastern and then at Roger Williams. And there's a lot of overlap there, because when you go to, fancy graduate schools, a lot of it is about the actual sort of education, being able to speak a certain language in a way, and really learning from the highest and more sort of complicated thinkers within the field. And, I really enjoyed my time there, but fundamentally my interest is in making buildings. And so I really like being on site. I like doing construction. And that really is what led me into the world of development. And so being a vice president of development for, almost a decade, there's a lot of overlap there, because there's a lot of sort of education involved and conversations that you are having throughout doing that job, which includes things like finding buildings, looking at leases, doing test fits, working with coordinating the business. So what's necessary for the business? What can we do with the building? How do we make them work together? Working on concepts and schematic designs. And this is a lot of what I still do today. But this was all part of my work as a vice president of development. And that certainly also included a lot of time doing work on site, finding contractors, managing construction, being an owner's representative. And a lot of this actually, even the design build work, I've been doing that since the early 2000s with the Climbing Wall Company. It's unreadable. And so there's a real sort of consistency here between my interest in construction as it relates to architecture, not just one or the other, and being able to then move into a development role where I was able to really use my history, leverage my story as someone who had already been doing design build work, so that I could speak to contractors, figure out and learn more about the things I wasn't as much of an expert in, etc. And so, my time as a development executive was fantastic, because it was really combining so many of the things that I loved to do, and building buildings was the result. And along the time doing all of that, I've also become a registered general contractor. I'm also a licensed architect. And for me, the overlap there is important. I don't think there's enough education about construction in architecture. A lot of architects do not like being on site. I'm the opposite. And I know a lot of architects who do like being on site. But there is a certain disposition that you need to have be able to have conversations in the dirt when people are figuring things out on the fly very often. And there's a lot of, when you look at the sort of owner's rep side of things and being a contractor and an architect, designing something that's fantastic but never gets built or can't be built because it's either too difficult, too expensive, whatever it is, that isn't really the goal if you're trying to actually create things that are able to be built, things that are able to be built at a budget that is workable. And so when we start a project, as someone leading development or someone working externally with your company, when we start a project, what ends up happening is you end up sort of doing this loop where as you go around each lap, you're actually using these different skills and these different series of experiences. You know, these are all different things that are coming into play as we sort of loop around and around and around and around as we get to more and more fine degrees of refinement in a project. And so what ends up happening is that as you're looping around and around, all of these different pedals, these different experiences, they're all just different things that I look at as ways to combine different areas of knowledge, different experiences, different places I've been to school, places I've worked, projects I've built, whatever it is. It's all about figuring out how to actually take advantage of that to move a project ahead faster, to be able to not have to call on other people all the time. This is a team sport. There are always a lot of experts being brought in. There's always an important part of bringing in experts in whatever domain it is, whether it's having help designing climbing walls. Even though I did that for a number of years, I still look for feedback on that. It's the same if I'm working on a skate park or a concert venue or whatever it is. I'm not the one who has every piece of information on everything, but by looking at all of these different areas of things that I've done in the past, I'm able to help put it together with owners quickly, efficiently, and with the goal of creating a world-class project that meets your budget and really helps you thrive as a business. And so for me, the important thing about all of this is that it really does matter who you hire. It matters what their experiences are. It matters what they're bringing to the table, so that when we interface with you, it's not just this we'll figure it out kind of thing. It's actually this whole process where we're actually bringing our own story to the table and we work together to figure out what's going to be the best result for you. So I hope that's helpful, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.